We're going to get started with this particular virtual tour today. If you were with us on last week, Friday, we physically went to Virginia Key Beach Park here in Miami. And Devon had worked so hard on putting together a virtual tour of the Virginia Key Beach. My PowerPoint that, as I looked through his research that he was pulling together, I thought would be great to share with you guys the information about Virginia Key Beach. And it's appropriate time when we consider our loss of John Lewis, Representative John Lewis, this past week, and with all the funeral services and what John Lewis stood for in civil rights. A giant in civil rights. We just felt that we wanted to spend a little bit more time on the Virginia Key Beach Park side of these things here in Miami, considering the importance of Virginia Key Beach Park and what it stood for in civil rights as well. So as we move forward, just saying, hey, y'all, okay, we're going to get started. If you have any questions, we will stop and answer questions. If you give us any questions on Instagram or give us any questions on Facebook, we're trying to see everything from here. But we're going to get started. And I hope that you can see the monitor behind us as we engage and we talk about Virginia Key Beach Park. Kind of want to give you an understanding of where the park is situated here in Miami. Virginia Key Beach Park, aside from the Rickenbacker Causeway, which is the only way by land to get there, prior to that, it was the only way that you can get to Virginia Key Beach Park was by ferry. This is an overlay of what it looks like today. And I'm not going to want to spoil it because we have a video also that we're going to play, and hopefully you'll be able to hear that particular video. It sits in the shadow of downtown Miami. Virginia Key Beach Park does. A very beautiful location, as you saw last week, and as you'll see again this week. I hope you guys can hear me. And as we move forward, we can't talk about, before we start talking about like Virginia Key Beach Park within itself and what it stood for, I want to talk about a couple of movements that happened across America in your research, and you were pulling together imagery and finding different locations. There are some key locations that you brought up. Virginia Key Beach Park, we know, was born out, and I was off camera. I apologize. I got to remember that. Still trying to socially distance and be on the camera at the same time. But Virginia Key Beach Park represented, this movement of civil rights. 1945. It predates a lot of these wait-ins. So we're going to get back to that. But we do want to talk about wait-ins that happened throughout history. Now, although wait-ins wasn't common as lunch counter sit-ins that we saw, and the bus boycotts that we seen, beach wait-ins was another peaceful way that blacks would protest the fact that they could not touch the same water that they were brought in over across the Atlantic, and the fact that blacks challenged the bigotry of racism and not being allowed to swim in water that man did not even make. So I don't know if you see the image here. Talk about this image that you see.
Yeah, definitely. This image is from it's in St. Augustine from 1964. This is a peaceful protest right here. We see displayed, just trying to show awareness to the issues that we were having during that time, and we still are seeing these issues to this day.
St. Augustine. So this picture was 1960.
Yeah, 1964.
64.
Yes.
St. Augustine, which is in Florida. Virginia Key Beach integration happened in 1945. That wait-in happened in 1945, which we're going to talk about. I just want to set the atmosphere of these dates. When you think about 1945, Virginia Key Beach wait-in, and years later, decades in a sense, people are still fighting in 1964 for their right to swim in God-built beaches.
Yes.
Here's another one. Can you talk about this particular one?
This is almost 10 years after, but this is in the summer of 1972. This is Madison, Connecticut, at a private beach. Yes.
Madison, Connecticut, summer of 1972. This protest was led by Ned Call at a private beach that blacks were not allowed to swim in. So you talk about 1964, 1972, we're still talking about allowing for blacks to be able to swim in water. And this is interesting. This is interesting. Let's move on. Let's move on. Here we go. Now we're looking at what?
All right. So this is Rainbow Beach. This is 1961. So this is a year, 3 years before the St. Augustine.
Okay.
This is in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yes.
Chicago. Definitely. Chicago. Rainbow Beach, 1961. You know, today is Virginia Key Beach's 75th anniversary. We understand. 1945, 2020, 75 years since the wait-in. But we're looking at what, 1961, 1972, 1964, still decades after Miami provided a separate but equal beach for people of color. Other locations across the United States were looking at ways to be able to swim. Now, we want to kind of pull up this next one because we hear about these things. We hear about what happened on the Edmund Petty Bridge, I believe, Selma, Alabama, with voters' right. You don't hear people talk about this particular one too much, but this particular one here in 1960 happened in Biloxi, Mississippi, where, you know, blacks were again demanding equal access to public beaches. And at worst, the protesters, they thought that it would be normal because it was their third time. At worst, they were going to get told to get out of the water,
exactly,
and arrested. And that's what happened typically in the previous wait-in. What was different about this particular wait-in?
That was different about this particular wait-in right here. Like Mr. Barber said, they were assuming it was going to be a peaceful protest. However, they were met with a lot of force. There was a lot of violence. There was a mob that came about that had brass knuckles, billy clubs, and many more weapons to attack these peaceful protesters.
So, Biloxi wait-in, same thing that happened in Miami. Can be known as what? Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday. Can be known as Bloody Sunday, where these protesters again was waiting in like other people did all across the nation, but in this instance, they were faced with a white mob that had brass knuckles, bats, bricks, and they were unarmed and they were beaten. And one person I read said that it looked like they almost decapitated one of the black protesters that were just protesting swimming in the beach. These were white people attacking black people, people of color. The interesting thing about this, and I always give homage to Dr. Beulah Hemingway, when she said, there's nothing new under the sun. The interesting thing about this one was that many of the protesters talked about how the police just stood on the banks of the shoreline and just watched them be massacred by this white mob. And in some instances, they encouraged the mob to beat the black people even more. Yes. This was sad. I mean, that we're faced with that, and we're faced with the same thing all over again when it talks about people wanting just their equal and civil rights that is afforded to every citizen of the United States. So this boycott, this wait-in in Biloxi became really savage, and they call it Bloody Sunday as a remembrance to many of the people. Which now brings us back to Miami. This place called Haulover Beach, which was a public beach in the 1940s, where people wanted to go out and sunbathe and just enjoy the natural freshness and of the environment. You know, Haulover Beach, where 7 black people they splashed into the water of Virginia Key excuse me, of Hollover, which was an all-white beach 75 years ago. And by them stepping into that water, eventually turned into the most profound social upheaval in American history. They talk about, we talk about Rosa Parks and the boycott, the bus boycott. We talk about what they said was the start of civil rights with the bombing of the Birmingham church. But 1945 was very significant for blacks to say, we're going to challenge this separate, well, it wasn't separate but equal because they didn't have their own beach. We're going to challenge this Jim Crow law saying that we cannot swim in beaches that were not built by you. I've read in archives and I've heard in archives where, hello Cello, I see Cello just made it online, thank you. I've heard in the archives, it's fine. I've heard in the archives, it may be just your phone, because we see it. I heard in the archives where they talk about, at the time, attorney Ellie Thomas being commissioned to stand on the shore, notifying the sheriff that, listen, we're going to do a wait-in this Sunday. Letting you know now, we're going to protest our inability to access the beach. And I've heard stories that the sheriff came, he was there, but he decided not to arrest anybody. That was interesting, that in Miami it was different, a contrast from Bloody Sunday. Yeah, exactly. And it's 1945 when stuff like that could easily have it could have happened, because it happened some 61 and
1961, 1964, continuously happening. It's definitely interesting to see how in 1945 how one situation could be handled, but then we go to Bloody Sunday in 1960, 20 plus years after, and the violence is
definitely. And I like to say in terms of why understanding the history of Miami and its origin, with Henry Flagler bringing in the railroad, Julia Tuttle. It's back. Julia Tuttle, who was known as the mother of Miami, and them establishing, Julia Tuttle feeling that Miami should be a tropical paradise, where Henry Flagler said Miami would just be a fisherman's town. Why was this significant? Why was a different result in terms of blacks protesting at Hollover as opposed to the blacks that protest in Biloxi? And I lend myself to believe it goes in there. I don't know if Connie Kennard is watching with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. We found that Miami really did become a tourist town. It became a tourist town, and it depended on tourism dollars of coming. And what's the worst thing that could happen to a tourist town? In terms of
feeling safe,
people feeling unsafe, people protest, something in the media that's negative about that particular city. For example, hurricane is out there in the water coming. If it wasn't COVID-19, many people will be canceling their trip to Miami because the news said that there's a hurricane in the water. So understanding this, I believe, played a role in Miami conceding. White Miamians conceding to a lot of issues and creating that separate but equal atmosphere in Miami because they didn't want the bad press. So the protest of wanting to swim in Miami that happened decades before the national civil rights movement began to take hold because of this. Quickly it resulted in what Miami-Dade County officials decided to open a beach for people of color because they didn't want the negative feedback, or they didn't want it to go to the Supreme Court by arresting them, which could have overturned their segregation rule, because we know the Supreme Court began to hear Board versus Brown versus Board of Education was coming up later, and other civil rights issues, that they could have been forced to integrate those beaches in the 1940s, which they wasn't ready for. So the best way is probably to appease the black population by giving them a section of beach called Virginia Key. And it did touch off 2 decades of sit-ins and demonstrations to integrate restaurants, nightclubs, hotels, and everything else in the county. That was that segue. Now, we're going to just watch a little clip. I hope you guys got the time to watch. This is a great video. We're going to see some pioneers in this video. We're going to hear voices in this video that's been so familiar to us. Just 5 minutes, if you can sit with us and kind of hopefully be able to see it and comment. We open for questions. Johnson State Dr. Ella Johnson State Park in Broward the first. Okay. I could barely read that. But we're going to watch this particular clip here. And hopefully the volume is going to...
Historic Virginia Key Beach Park in Miami, Florida was a piece of paradise for African Americans during segregation in the United States. In the early 1900s, the beach was used by those African Americans that had access to boats. There was fishing, picnics, and some swimming. The area was known as Bear's Cut.
My dad was a member of a group called the 3rd Avenue Anglers Club, and all the businessmen around that his area avenue used to go fishing every Monday. We used to go down to catch the boat on the Miami River around 5th Street, and there was a short ride to a place called Bear's Cut. We got off the boat, but it was very deep. I remember it was not a beach. It was very deep, and my dad wouldn't let me go in the water. He would take me on the edge, maybe. But that was what is now today Virginia Beach.
1945 brought about aid-in of a North Dade County all-white beach that changed the barrier island of Virginia Key into the colored-only beach for Dade County. Virginia Key Beach holds a special place in many South Floridians' hearts as a spiritual and sacred safe space that belonged to African Americans during the difficult and often hostile climate of segregated Miami.
We brought all the neighborhoods together, all the social classes together, people from Broward, Palm Beach, North Florida, and so forth.
The irony of it all was that there was no bridge. The churches would get together at Memphis Ferry to take us over.
Ministers brought their congregations over here for baptisms. Families seized on the opportunity to use this beach for their pleasure, for their children.
And we enjoyed it on holidays. We just filled that beach. We were so glad that we could get somewhere to go, but it never was separate and equal.
The 1960s brought the civil rights movement and racial integration to public venues. African American-goers ventured out to other beaches in South Florida, and the historic park slowly fell into disrepair.
They began to falter on its upkeep of the beach. Consequently, nobody was keeping a house for us at all.
The historic beach saw fewer visitors in the 1970s, and finally, after Dade County transferred the beach property to the city of Miami, Virginia Key Beach Park closed to the public.
It was just more than a beach. It was the heart of the Black community where they could rec and fellowship all at the same time.
New life comes to Virginia Key Beach Park. A community task force of local residents comes together to protect Virginia Key Beach from interested developers. Overwhelming community support successfully convinces the City Commission to form the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust to manage and develop the historic beach park for public use as a public park.
On this 82.5 acres of land, it would be a whole arena of environmental things, fun things, also a building where you could actually go and learn about the history of Virginia Key that will be open to the entire public. It won't be the colored beach anymore. It'll be the colored beach story that is open to the public.
You won't be able to come and be ignorant of where you are, be unaware that this was a place that had very deep significance for a very, very long time.
We intend to tell the story of Virginia Key Beach in its fullness, and I think that's something that we need to say to the generations coming along.
We want you to come back and enjoy this experience and enjoy all the minute this spiritual piece of property has to offer the world.
Okay. Thank you for that. That video can be found on Facebook and on YouTube. And in that video, we saw several prominent pioneers. We saw Athlete Range, who was a major component in getting the Virginia Key Beach Park restored, saved. Interesting to hear Garth Reeves, who was on the board of directors of the Black Archives, talk about as a kid catching a boat and his father not allowing him because the water was too deep to go there sometimes because they had to wade from the boats into Virginia Key. You heard Dr. Fields talk about the ferries that existed, that back and forth. You also heard about the churches, and the churches used the water for baptism. One of our, at the Black Archives, one of our strongest collections that we have is Dan Johnson. Dan Johnson was the manager of Virginia Key Beach Park at the time. And the good thing about Dan Johnson is he documented by photograph a lot of activity at Virginia Key Beach Park. Most of our pictures that we have come from Dan Johnson being a part of it. One I'm showing you online here is an article out of Miami Herald in 1945. On the bottom corner, it says Colored Beach to open soon. And then I zoomed in a little bit so you can see that. Colored Beach to open soon, 1945. And I'll read what it says. It says the county's colored population will have a public beach I'm reading backwards. Beach of, I can't see that, its own for daily use, which in the next 3 weeks. So I'm gonna stop trying to read it because on our video it's backwards in order for you to be able to see it, and I can't see it from the camera. But it was an article talking about the beach opening. It was highlighted. Now, you heard one person say separate but equal. I've heard two sides of this. Some people applaud the separate but equal because the amenities that were at Virginia Key Beach was so great. And you had some people that were saying it wasn't really equal because it wasn't the best part of the beach of Miami. As a matter of fact, one, it was next to the sewage treatment plant. Two, I've heard many children drowned at Virginia Key Beach because of the rip current that is there. It's a bad part of the beach. Even recently, maybe in the past year, I believe it was, a student at Booker T. Washington and the family was swimming there, and a lady and her kids were caught in the rip current, and he went out to save them, but he saved them, but he lost his life. That's just a testament to the rip current that is at Virginia Key Beach. But for blacks during that particular time, they were happy to have an area that they can call their own. And of course, some of the images in Dan Johnson collection shows workers building the cabanas, building the area that would be the beach. We have all of those images. Even newspapers would come to Virginia Key Beach and highlight across America this black beach in the 1940s. Again, we saw in the 1960s, 1970s, there were still places that did not allow blacks to swim. But for Miami, this was a big move. This was a big move, a big statement to have Virginia Key Beach, available. This article here that we have on the screen is from the Unlimited that talks about how beautiful the beach is. The many people that visit the beach, from celebrities to politicians to civil rights icon Martin Luther King. Many of these people came into the beach. Want to point out what had become iconic for many people was this sign. It was a thing to take a picture at this sign. Now, what do you find interesting about this sign that says Dade County Parks, Virginia Beach?
Well, probably the colored only.
It says colored only. And why does that stand out?
Well, I guess because they're trying to show that, you know, it's a color only beach. That's not something you commonly see.
But interesting enough, though, it says colored only, but Virginia Key Beach wasn't just for colored people. You know, it was open to people brown, you know, beige, yellow, anybody that was disproportionately attacked and not allowed the civil liberties. They were able to come to Virginia Key Beach. We know that historically Jim Crow laws, 1/3 black blood, 1 drop, you're black. So if your color was not mayonnaise white, excuse my French, I'm stealing that from Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club. If your color wasn't white, mayonnaise white, you were considered black.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can go to Miami Beach, you can go to Harlover, you got to go to Virginia Key Beach. You know, this sign began to be very iconic. We found several photos of this sign. This is a group of men just, you know, sitting in front of the sign. You know, this was the sign that you saw, Dade County Parks, Virginia Beach, colored only. Here's another one of the iconic sign that hung at Virginia Key Beach Park saying the same thing. It was a sense of pride for many people of color to have their opportunity to swim in a public space. Another iconic picture of the sign was after the hurricane, where the sign fell, and I don't know who the young lady is. I believe we have in archives exactly who that was that stood by the sign. You see this picture everywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
This is one of the most famous signs of Virginia Beach here in Miami. But as Virginia Key Beach came about, many people came. You know, many people came to Virginia Key. They had picnics, they had conferences. It was just the place to be. So the next series of photographs that we're going to show you from the Dan Johnson collection showcases just blacks enjoying themselves at Virginia Key Beach. You know, here's another angle of Virginia Key Beach and how many people were in the water, just happy to be a part of, to have these liberties that were not afforded to everybody across America. Because you're still talking about the 1940s and 1950s, and segregation still not allowed, not just in the South. And that's the misconception for many people, is that segregation was only in the South. Segregation was nationwide, because we show Chicago not allowing people to swim. We show Connecticut not allowing people to swim, you know. So don't, you know, history goes to the people that tell history, and sometimes people try to whitewash history and say segregation didn't happen north. You know, it was just a southern issue. No, it was all over. Here's another picture of the lifeguard stand on Virginia Key Beach watching the people swim. Now, the very important thing about Virginia Key Beach was the dance floor. We heard so much when we visited. We think we showed you the dance floor, and we came across this photograph here.
Yes, this is the very iconic picture of the Virginia Key Beach dance floor right here. When we went to visit Virginia Key Beach, it was definitely a great experience seeing the dance floor. It has a lot of different things saying that, you know, the mashed potato, the twist, and all these different dances were, you know, displayed here at this dance floor, and it was just a social hub for a lot of African Americans.
And this is the thing about this picture. The dance floor is in the shape of like a octagon somewhat, right? And if you notice, the people around are outside off the dance floor. You know, it's, I guess if you can't dance, don't get on the floor. You know. Here's another picture that we want to bring to attention: picnic tables, blacks enjoying themselves at the beach, pavilions. This particular barbecue pit, you know, for the use of large groups. You know, there was a barbecue pit that they had there. Not only that, were cabanas, you know, cabanas at Virginia Key Beach. And that's why many people said it was equals in a sense, because it had a lot of amenities, you know, at the beach. The cabanas that was there where people enjoyed themselves, the swimming, you know. Even in this photo, you see that the black lady in this picture is very fair skinned, you know, could be in a sense passable, but yet she's at Virginia Key Beach, you know, because you can compare her texture to the kids that she's with, which I'm assuming would be her children. But beauty contests, we have images of beauty contests that took place at Virginia Key Beach. Was a fun place to be. You heard how Garth Reese talked about how fun it used to be at Virginia Key Beach. the cabanas that were there for people to enjoy themselves here. That was not heard of in America. It wasn't heard of in America that there was a beach that allowed this much activity for blacks. And when we talk about entertainers, we have pictures. Here's a picture of Dan Johnson standing next to Joe Louis, who would frequent Virginia Key Beach, the world heavyweight boxing champion. As well as next to that is a parade of cars that is going on with beauties in it, the convertible. So people that said that black people didn't have back then, I mean, you know, blacks had, you know, so that misnomer about blacks being poor and can't afford anything is not always true and accurate in telling the depiction of black history. Even shows, concerts. This is particular picture here is people in the stands, you know, sitting, watching a show. Either they're getting ready for a concert that was happening. You have a car in the foreground. But most importantly, we heard about people talk about was the baptism. This particular photo is a famous photo as well, where there's a church having a baptism at Virginia Key Beach, because the baptism pool wasn't always in churches, especially the wooden churches didn't have a baptism pool. So what they would do is to go to the beach and baptize people. I know in Georgia that's something that they kind of still do sometimes for most churches. But when we talk about Virginia Key Beach as a whole and what it stood for and how prominent it was, there's a gift and a curse when it comes to integration. You know, sad to say, when we talk about the lunch counter sit-ins, people going to Woolworth, forcing the issue of civil rights and forcing the issue of serving people not based on their color, race, or creed. We talk about how blacks then began to move their money from black areas and go to white areas, black stores and go to white stores. Dorothy Dandridge, the movie, I always use that as an example, where Halle Berry played Dorothy Dandridge, where the first time she came to Miami, she said she asked for a dressing room when she was performing in Miami Beach. They told her, you know, Negroes don't get dressing rooms here, you know, and they say they opened up the broom closet and said you can change in there. And it was a small broom closet. But the second time Dorothy Dandridge came to Miami, as depicted in the movie, played by Halle Berry, she opened the doors and they gave her a suite, a top floor suite. You know, that showed a sign that integration happened, that the Civil Rights Act was passed. And now these black performers, instead of just being good enough to perform and get back over the tracks, now you can stay in our hotels. So many of those performers stopped coming to the black areas. They integrated the beaches, so many of the blacks, instead of coming over to Virginia Key, they began to go to Crandon Park, they began to go to Miami Beach, they began to go to Howlover Beach. And like many of our black institutions and our black restaurants, they begin to suffer. Economically, they begin to suffer. And we see today with COVID-19, many stores or many restaurants are having to close their doors because they're not getting the finances that they need in order to stay open. This is the same thing that happened to black stores during integration. This is the same thing that happened to many black stores during civil rights, where white people began to understand that black dollars were not black, they were still green.
Yes.
You know? And Virginia Key Beach was not absolved from this integration, because we are aware that, as we saw in the video, Virginia Key Beach Park became desolate. People stopped going. They closed the door, and like the late After the Ring said in the video, there was nobody there to take care of the shop. So the shop went bad. But a resurgence began to happen all over, not just with Virginia Key Beach, which depicted in this video is the carousel, the merry-go-round that you saw in the video, now being shuttered with graffiti and closed down. A resurgence happened in the 80s, where people began to identify these landmarks that was well known in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s that went defunct. Now people began to pay homage back to these locations that came out of Jim Crow. And you begin to see these pop up.
Definitely, yes. You start to see these these plaques that begin they're paying homage to the situations that transpired. We can see this is from Fort Lauderdale. I believe that this is from Biloxi, Mississippi as well. So we do start to see all over, these sites of inspiration are showing that we have come a long way, showing progression and paying homage to our history as well. So yes, this is definitely very impactful, especially that they did put up these plaques in numerous beaches across the nation.
There's a saying that I have that until the lions tell the story, the tales of the hunt will always and only glorify the hunter. And I'm finding that most people are realizing, we have to be the ones that tell our history. Mm-hmm. We can't let, and I heard Gene Tenney, who is still with us, said in the video, you can't be ignorant in a sense to where you are. So although integration happened, we still want our story to be told. And many of these plaques that we've seen go up in Fort Lauderdale and at all these different black beaches throughout the United States, even at Virginia Key Beach, that tells you that these places were born out of segregation. We cannot ignore that fact. Just as much as many of America glorify the Confederate generals and Confederate statues, we as a people need to keep our history intact, because if we don't keep it intact, if we don't tell these stories, we don't put these monuments, it becomes, well, did slavery really exist? It really didn't exist. Did we really tell black people they can't swim in the same ocean water of the Atlantic that we brought them over here on enslaved? The same water that many of the enslaved Africans said, I'd rather have death than be enslaved, and jumped into the water and drown. That same water that we see these tropical waves come across from Africa, across the Atlantic, and turn into hurricanes, So that means and we talk about the Saharan dust, that's what they always talk about, right? The Saharan dust is from Africa.
Yeah.
So you telling me we can't swim in the same water that has touched the African shores and now has ended up in American shores? So by us being able to document this is very important for people of color, so that our children's children will know this and not take it lightly, what we have come across and what we have endured and what more we still have to endure. This has become a badge of honor for many, as we see in this next photo, where these guys I think probably to your right, if you're looking to your left, are posted in front of the sign. And then later we see a current picture of Guy Fortune, who is the director of Virginia Key Beach Park as well. I believe that's Ketchy in this picture. And Gene Tenney holding up a replica of that sign that says Dade County Parks, Virginia Beach colored only. That's powerful, that this park came out of this. During that push in 2008, where they were able to reopen Virginia Key Beach Park, many of the pioneers, you see Eugenia Thomas in this picture. I see Georgiana Bethel. I see Gene Tenney. I see so many people that were part of getting this park opened up again, which was owned by the county, who then let it go defunct. Then they turned it over to the city. And then the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust worked on reestablishing this as a historic site. So that we see prominent photos like this lifeguard here that would keep watch and save as many people as they can save in the torrential waters of Virginia Key Beach Park, to fundraising that happened as they pushed to get the Civil Rights Museum open. That's a whole nother gambit of trying to get a civil rights movement open, because in a sense, you can theoretically say this is where civil rights started.
Definitely.
The civil rights movement started with the Wade-In, 1945, not 1960, but 1945, with members of the Miami community wanting just to have the ability to swim in the water. But Virginia Key Beach Park, again, as we click through these photos, are very beautiful. Virginia Key Beach Park. This is an overhead of the park. We saw those piers that were out there as intended to keep the beach from eroding. What did he say? Before Charlie, I think his name was Charlie last week. He let us know that those piers are designed because if they didn't have that, Virginia Key Beach Park, it would become a cliff. And ironically, I'm looking at this photo and I see how deep the water is. The drop off isn't that far. Can you see that?
Definitely.
That drop off is really, really close there. And tie in the rip current that's there. But it's still a beautiful park. We saw the dance floor in the picture that you see before us here, that is back and covered, you know. We saw the carousel, which we saw in an earlier photo that was that went bad. They was able to restore this carousel in the way that it is now. We saw last week when we went through the railroad track that was prominent for the train. They're working on getting it fixed or bringing in a new engine. So if you have any checks to write, you can write it to the Black Archives, and you can write it to Virginia Key Beach Park to help bring back some of these key components of the park that people remember. And this new component that they had, we saw the sand castle that was built. I think Turkish Airlines that they built this, the remark there, nonstop flight from Miami to
I believe it was Turkey, yes, and yeah, it has all the different historical sites that you see around the world.
Yeah,
all embedded in the castle. So.
And this picture is when it was kind of almost still in its prime. We saw that it changed then, but it's still white, less grass. But I think this is a great landmark. It was a part of Guinness Books of World Records. It's called the castle. Hopefully they'll find some funding to get this restored or to build a new one that identifies itself directly with Virginia Key Beach, maybe some faces of some of the pioneers that helped make it happen. Can't this cut out the cabanas and the colorful Bahamian architecture that's on the island? You see a picture of the train in this particular photo, as well as the colorful Bahamian looking, because it has its references to Bahamas, this time for Bahamian families and Bahamian immigrants that came over to Miami that contributed to the building of Miami. We see again those piers that are still there. They restored some, and there's some work being done to create more in order to keep the beach from eroding. Although I would love to jump off a cliff, I don't want to see a cliff at Virginia Key Beach Park. And the natural wildlife that's there, you know, that occupy the area, seagulls and things like that, and the great ecosystem that is there. Want to point out some of the amenities that they have when the park reopened. From the carousel, which you see in the picture, you see the playgrounds that they have that are great, as well as the train track. Of course, weddings, a great place to definitely rent to have your outdoor event, your romantic wedding, as you see set up in this photo, concerts, dance events, and galas, and just to know that they are celebrating their 75th anniversary. Been 75 years, 1945, that the opening of Virginia Key Beach, but also the kickoff of civil rights in Miami happened with Virginia Key Beach Park. We thought it was very important as the Black Archives to really get this message out for our friends at Virginia Key Beach. If you want to donate $75 for 75 years, definitely find out ways. You can go to their website at hvkbmp.org. Again, it's www.hvkbmp.org. Or you can call them at 305-960-4600. I'm going to read it again because I'm reading backwards. 305-960-4600 to find out how can you give towards Virginia Key Beach Park. We're excited that we were able to do this. I'm excited to be able to do this with Devon, who is new on our staff, a history major that comes from...
well, I'm a military apprentice, so I come from everywhere.
All right. What university?
Radford University.
Radford University, as a history major. We're glad to have him on staff. Has done a marvelous job of putting this information together for me, making my job easier. Great to have a staff. It's been a long time coming for the Black Archives. I salute all of my staff that has been doing the Safer at Home series. You know, they're finding ways to stay active and bring information to you. We're going to continue this. I do want to announce tomorrow we have Storytime in Color with Camila Pritchett. We're coming back Monday with a special event with the National Park Service that talk about Porgy Key and Lancelot Jones family and their interaction with Porgy Key. That will be headed by our archivist and our assistant archivist, Jocelyn Hurtado and Louis Berthen, along with a special guest from the National Park Service. I don't want to butcher the name, but don't want to say the name and I don't know it offhand. Will join us on Monday. That will not be on Instagram. It will be on our Facebook, the Black Archives History and Research Foundation of South Florida Facebook page. It will be live broadcast through Zoom. You can get on that webinar so that you can ask questions. Please tell a friend to tell a friend. We'll come back on Tuesday with Moments Today in Black History with Alicia Melton. We will not have Jeopardy nor on Wednesday, or we will not have a tour on Friday because we'll be attending the virtual Association of African American Museums conference, the national conference. And we want to point out, I'm sorry, Park Ranger Gary Bremen. Thank you, Camila Pritchett, for chiming in. We have the Park Ranger Gary Bremen will be our special guest with our archivist and assistant archivist on Monday. You don't want to miss that history about Biscayne National Park, Porgy Key, and the Lancelot Jones family. That's a collection that we have here at the Black Archives. So we ask that you guys, no story time next Saturday as well. This Saturday, yes. I didn't want to say it because I didn't want people not to join us this Saturday. But next week, starting on Tuesday, the Black Archives, some of us will be attending the virtual conference for the Association of African American Museums. Therefore, we will not have some of our virtual programming. We ask that you join us. Go to blackmuseums.org, blackmuseums.org, and sign up for some of the sessions that's going to happen. We were going to have the 2020 conference here in Miami, where we convene and have about 600 professionals in the Black Museum from across the United States as well as Canada and the Caribbean. But due to COVID-19, we've gone virtually. We have rescheduled the conference to take place in Miami in 2021. So let's keep our fingers crossed and our prayers up that we would get through this COVID issue. We want to again give our condolences to John Lewis family for the loss of this iconic civil rights giant. We just want to thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, I didn't see any questions. I hope I didn't miss any questions that we may have had. Visit blackmuseum.org for more information. Info on Associates of African American Museums. Thank you, Camila. Great for giving us this. We're able to see it in real time on this laptop here. So I didn't see any questions. I hope I didn't miss any questions. Camila, did I miss any questions on Instagram? Jocelyn, did I miss any questions on Facebook? We don't want to leave and not answering any questions that anyone may have had. Okay, great. Look like we are good. Thank you for joining us. This is the Safer at Home series. Please continue to stay safe and protect yourself from COVID-19. We try to social distance on this one, but we are wearing our masks, and while we're in the office, we just took it off for the programming. We're excited to have you here. We appreciate you, and thank you so much to my staff that's here at the facility, as well as those that are working from home. Let's continue to do some great work as we continue to tell the story of Black people in South Florida and across our nation. Take care. Let's do this.
Thank you very much, guys.
COVID. Y'all take care. Goodbye. I want to wait for you.